All right, welcome back, listening audience. It's your host, Mike Sedini. We're back with the WTTA podcast. Joining us today is my co-host, Kevin Barry. Kevin, long time no see. We did this yesterday. We're doing it again. It's good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you.
And our special guest, and someone that I've developed quite a relationship in the last month. I'm excited to have you on today, Patrick Bertagna. How you doing?
Great. Welcome. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, we're excited to have you because you're the CEO of MedAlert. We met through a mutual acquaintance. I believe in your product. When I saw a little bit about your background, it's something that I said this is something that the firearms industry needs, right? For many years, I would say the industry we're not tech savvy. We're getting there. But that's one piece that we've always kind of lacked in the firearms industry. I mean, a lot of guns are, think about the 1911 and think about, the technology necessarily isn't there. But I think we're finally getting to that point where technology is being accepted in our industry. And so I'm excited to have you on to talk about that today and talk about this amazing product. But at the same time, I kind of want to dial it back. And I want to know your history because as gun industry folks, like we are always fascinated by people's journey to where they got to us, right? Like how did they end up here? And I think your story is really interesting. So tell us a little about yourself.
I started in the tech business 3 decades ago, and my first endeavor was developing software for supply chain management. Prior to that, I had been in the garment business and apparel business, footwear business as a manufacturer. So I sold my company and I was looking to, in the late 1990s, sold the company and I was looking to reinvent myself. And I saw a story about a little girl named Elizabeth Smart in Utah. She was abducted and it was all over the news and it was an ongoing story in America. I was very captivated by that story. And I just sort of had an epiphany. Why don't we start putting GPS tracking devices inside of kids' shoes? And it was really one of those just sort of aha moments. I had experience in making footwear and I had experience in supply chain management tracking technology. So we embarked on this endeavor and it's been quite a journey ever since. We evolved over the years and our core business is, I like to say we save lives. We help save lives. We basically make products to help keep remote monitoring oversight of human beings with cognitive disorders. So Alzheimer's, dementia, autism, traumatic brain injury. So we've been very active in a niche market where people need technology to help secure the livelihood and the well-being of their loved ones. About a year ago, I was afforded the opportunity to look at this gun tracking technology. A friend of mine brought it to my attention, a gentleman by the name of Rob Adams, investor in our company as well. And thought, this would be a great adjunct to what we're currently doing. I'm a big believer in utilizing technology to help save lives. And, obviously just watching the news, day in and day out over the last 30 years, we know we have some problems in this country. But, taking people's guns away is not the answer. When grandma has Alzheimer's, you don't lock her up. You put technology on her that can help her loved ones track and monitor her and her well-being. And ensure her safety. Same thing with firearms. You don't take them away from people. You can't, first of all, because of the Second Amendment, but most importantly, that's just not right. But we have to secure and know where firearms are at all times. So that's what kind of led us here. And I reciprocate the sentiment. It's been really nice to have met you in this short period of time, and we have developed a very nice relationship. So again, thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak with you today.
Oh, 100%. And Kevin, my conversations with Patrick are like podcasts, right? Like we have these great conversations. But one of the things that I loved about Patrick when I first met him is when he was explaining this technology, and Kevin's going to totally understand this. Like as gun people, we are so paranoid and we're goofy sometimes. We're paranoid about being tracked, or when we hear the word tracked, it seems like it's like a negative thing. But we're also the same people that are showing our firearms off on Instagram, right? But then we turn right around and we're like, don't track me, don't do this, whatever, right? But when you first met me, you were being very delicate when the way you were approaching talking to me about this product, to make sure you were crystal clear that this is not something that you want to be developed for any kind of rights infringements or, that type of thing. And it was really funny because you're like, hey, the product could do this XYZ or whatever if we wanted it to. And, I was like, oh, that's cool. And then I was like, well, can it do this? Right. Like I took it a step further that almost, that the typical gun person would probably be like, who doesn't want that? And you literally go to me, you're the second gun person that's asked me that. Right. And, I think it kind of speaks to the way that we're coming along, right? We're starting to understand that, to get ahead of these negative outcomes of firearms, that maybe technology could be our friend. And if it's done right, and if there's a mutual understanding of the fears and things that we as the firearms industry go through, when it comes to protecting the Second Amendment, if we're working with the companies and you're working with actual gun industry folks, we're going to make the best product we can. And it's one of those things. It's like either you use it or you don't. You don't have to use it, right? But it just makes sense. So, kind of take me through that. Like like you were you kept telling me, hey, like I'm trying to learn here. Like I'm not trying to come in with an ego. I'm not trying to come in here to say like this is what we got to do. And that's what I love about you. Like it's just you're open to any suggestion, right? You want to get it right. I got that right?
Yeah, no. I always say anybody that knows me and works with me will know that I use this line quite often. The only thing I'm really attached to is success. I don't care how you get there, as long as it's lawful and moral. But I don't care if you work in the middle of the night in your pajamas eating peanut butter. As long as you get the work done, I'm okay with that. So I'm attached to success. And yeah, you're right. On our first conversation, I was treading very lightly, because there is a sensitivity around tracking and monitoring. And what we like to say is that our technology really is about notifications and recovery. And the idea, the way, let me start by explaining to the audience, our product is simple, but yet very effective. It's a combination steel cable lock. Yeah, everyone's got one of those. But we all know if that's on the firearm, anybody takes it, they can cut it off with a bolt cutter. But what we've added to the combination lock is a highly sensitive patented motion sensor and a GPS and cellular tracking technology. So what that does is use cases, your weapon is in a nightstand drawer. 5-year-old toddler opens the nightstand drawer. A housekeeper, a neighbor, a friend, doesn't matter who. The minute that the drawer is open, the firearm owner gets an alert on their phone. There's motion. So that's the first sort of line of defense. The second one is if the weapon is taken and the GPS and cellular kicks in. So it'll work virtually anywhere there's cellular coverage, and you'll get a pin drop on your phone, and whereby you can alert the authorities or neighbors or friends. I mean, think about the assassination attempt on Trump's life a couple months ago, right? The father would have known that his weapon and his son are on their way to that rally. He could have called the authorities and said so. And we don't know, but there's a likelihood that the outcome would have been different, right? They would have averted that situation. And same with any school shootings, which I think we're going to get into a little bit, obviously, after what the horrific tragedy of the other day. But getting back to the core question, I tread lightly on this monitoring because it's really about notifying you and giving you the tools to go recover your firearm. And you're right. When we first spoke, I said, when you asked me, but could you expand that notification process? The answer is, of course, the technology's there. And we've been talking to people, at American Legion and folks like, at you and Walk the Talk America and insurance providers and a whole bunch of people that are involved in your industry. And the consensus is, and that circle is, hey, the more people.
All right. It wouldn't be a WTTA podcast without something going goofy. But here, we're back. We're back, Patrick. We apologize for the technical difficulties, folks. Pick up where you left off. Let's hear more about this product.
Obviously, as soon as we start talking technology, we lose internet connection, right? So just to pick it back up. So we were talking about, you were asking, but could we tell more people, where the gun is and where the gun's going and if it's been moved for the purpose of potentially trying to address the elephant in the room about veteran suicide and teenage suicide and suicide in general and all types of nefarious uses of firearms that ultimately end up in tragedies. And I said, yes, we can. And so that led to a really awakening, I think. And we started talking to other folks in your industry, and the consensus was, yeah. So imagine now it's not just the firearm owner that gets the alert if the weapon is moved and where the weapon is going. But imagine if also we include a spouse or a caregiver or a social worker, again, on an as needed basis. The technology is such, we developed it so that as soon as the weapon is moved and as soon as it's on the go, the alert is sent and the notification is sent to the firearm owner's phone. The minute the phone receives that information, in the background, the phone sends a message to our server that says data received. And at that point, we wipe that data clean off of our servers. So even if the FBI came to us with a warrant and said, hey, I want to know where Mike was last week, where his gun was last week, we'd have no way to oblige him. Zero, because the data gets wiped. So, which is a good thing. I mean, we want Second Amendment advocates and all gun owners out there to know that we're very, very conscientious of this. And the technology was developed by gun owners, people that understand this. So it's very mission critical for us to, emphasize this point. However, those notifications can be sent to more than just the gun owner if on an as needed basis. And I think that opens up an entire new world of possibilities in terms of addressing suicide. Let's start there. And other things, obviously, that impact the misuse of a firearm.
Yeah, I'm going to actually tell a story. I've told this story before. It's a very embarrassing story, but this would have been perfect for the first time I fired a gun, which was a negligent discharge, technically, because my friend's father had a Beretta in his dresser drawer, and we were young. We were too young to be around firearms without supervision. But my friend told me one day, he goes, hey, like, I got to show you something, right? We go upstairs. He pulls out his dad's Beretta, 9mm, takes out the magazine, points the firearm at the bed. Thank God I had the sense to be like, hey, man, like, we don't know if that's still loaded. And he's like, you think it's loaded? I took the magazine out. I'm like, I don't know. Like, let's go outside in the backyard. I ended up taking the gun out of his hand. I knew not to point it at anybody, but I went outside, of course, like fired around into the grass into the backyard. Whole neighborhood heard it, saw it. Thank God I didn't get in trouble. But it's one of those situations where I think about that, right? Like that could have been a disaster. And I only tell that story because I want people to understand. Like I want people to understand that these things happen. But how great would it have been? I mean, how great would it have been if he was like a responsible gun owner and had that gun locked up? But having said that, how great would it have been if this product was on there and at least he could have been notified and he could have made the phone call to say, why did my gun just move? Or, you know what I mean? Like it's that extra layer of security. And I think that's important for people to understand.
Yeah, no, it's, that I think that was part of the missing link in terms of guns, safe storage and gun safety and so forth. Again, a lock's good. It's a good first step. A safe is a good first step, but if it's, most people don't have real big safes. A lot of new gun owners, they go buy a little metal box, with a little rinky dinky combination lock on the outside, and they keep that in their glove in their glove box. Yeah. Some in their glove box or some in their nightstand. And again, that is not a deterrent. I mean, anybody with a screwdriver can pop that little metal box open and there's the gun. Even if the gun has a lock on it, again, a bad guy can take that and go with a bolt cutter or a hacksaw or something and cut that lock off. So knowing that the gun's been moved, knowing where the gun is, in addition to it being locked, I think is a trifecta in terms of the ultimate gun safety. And our goal and why, we appreciate the partnership and our alliance with you and other organizations out there. Like I said, we're starting to form an alliance with American Legion. And, why we appreciate this is because I think we can't solve this problem. With all due respect, I don't think anybody by themselves can solve this problem. It needs to be a collective. There needs to be Technology needs to be a piece of it. All the great work that you guys do at WTTA needs to be part of it. We need the gun manufacturing industry. And then we need the government to support this in different ways, PSAs out there and emphasizing and pushing gun safety, incentivizing people through tax credits. I mean, there's a whole slew of things that can be done, that should be done, that will get done, but we've got to get everybody at the table. And when I came into this business unit, we've been in the saving lives business, like I said, for 2 decades. So I understand technology and how to, know where things and people are and all that. So I understand that very well. But when we entered into the firearms business, I quickly realized that there's a lot of money, a lot of brain trust, a lot of people trying to resolve these problems, but they're all talking in a vacuum, in an echo chamber. I mean, nothing's changed. We have just as many unfortunate gun, school shootings that, now than we did 20 years ago. It's like, and same thing with, people taking their lives. I mean, it's actually increasing when you add, young people. I mean, when I grew up, young people didn't just go into their parents' nightstand drawer and grab a gun and kill themselves. This is now happening. When I was growing up, we didn't have school shooting. I mean, I'm dating myself, but we did not have school shootings when I was in school 45 years ago. And if we did, they were so rare. I mean, you never even heard about them. So I think we need to really address this from a holistic perspective of, we got to get everybody in the room and we got to talk. And what I really like about, when our conversations, Michael, offline are, we know that, the left, wants to take guns away. That's not realistic. I mean, that's not even constitutionally legal. So I don't even know why they bring that up. And the right wants to say, hey, I have a 2A right, I have a 2A right, leave me alone. Well, that's not right either. I mean, we have problems. We have to address them. And I think where we align really well is that we both came to terms with that. It's like, yeah, we've got to address this. We've got to thread this needle. And we need to bring some sensible, reasonable, comprehensive solutions to the marketplace and set goals. Like, let's set goals. Like, whatever the number of people that die every day from unnecessary shootings, let's get that numbers. I mean, some people say it's 130, some people say it's 22 veterans a day. Whatever the number is, let's set a goal that reduce that number by 10% every year. And in 10 years from now, we're down to 0. Like, that's a realist, like let's try there instead of just talking and getting nothing done.
Yeah, and I have a question for Kevin, but I want to say something first. One of the reasons why I like this product is that I've seen some products similar in the sense that, it alerts you when the gun moves, but this one literally can alert you when the gun leaves your residence, right? Whereas like an air tag or anything like that.
Your car.
Exactly. Like you can track where your firearm is at all time. Some of these air tags and stuff like that, if you just leave the Wi-Fi, then it's a wrap. You know what I mean? But I really like that ability. And I love the scenario of, say, like, we'll get into different scenarios, but this could just be an agreement between, if I'm not right up here and my wife says, hey, I'm not comfortable with where you're at. You know what I mean? And if I could give her some peace of mind to say, hey, look, I'm going to add you to this. You're going to know if this gun ever moves or anything like that. It's going to be in the safe, but that's just an extra layer of security on top of the fact that I just gave you the code. You're the only one who has the safe code. But if for some reason I can get into this, because let's face it, like, people can get into safes. Like, safes are not necessarily foolproof. Mike Baker from Cannon Safe, well, he's not with Cannon Safe anymore, but his family built a business on safes. And he said that his father used to leave the house, and him and his brother always found ways to break into the safes and look at the firearms, right? And once again, using this real life, example of, if there was a gun alert on those guns in the safe, or whatever, if you have one gun, you have 20 guns, whatever you want, like however you want to do it. How great would it be if his father would be able to get that alert and go, what are you guys doing? You know what I mean? Like, maybe it's not something that's going to happen in tragedy, but at least the person knows that the guns are being messed with. But you remind me of Kevin. Like, Kevin dove into this industry, and he started to learn things. And it's kind of funny because, like, it's been fun to watch Kevin. I like to talk to Kevin about, like, what are your thoughts on this? Because as a regular person coming in, as a quick learner, he had to understand, like, okay, this is what's important to firearms owners. So Kevin, like, how do you feel about this product? Like, as the outsider who's now sort of the, you're on the inside because of WTTA and the work you've done here, but like, what are your thoughts? Because you're very good at always saying, like, is this going to be a problem for people, or what are they going to say? Like, you anticipate the problems.
Yes, that's part of the lovely job that comes with marketing, walk the talk, where some people think it's a Trojan horse of healthcare and trying to predict what kind of guards would be raised by gun owners. But I just see a ton of potential in so many different use cases for this technology, even if it's, like you say, putting in a safe to where somebody gets an alert. Maybe it's a dad and his grandfather has a gun, and he gets an alert 10 o'clock at night. Hey, Dad, why'd you open up your safe? Is everything good? It gives that opportunity that you and I know, Mike, is sometimes life-saving. Same with an option to maybe give a friend, hey, you're in a tough spot. Do you mind if I put my device that lets me know if you're accessing your gun on your gun to temporarily secure it for a little bit? Obviously, everybody's worried about maybe the risk legal, but that provides a great option that's not a transfer that might be illegal in some states. And it would let you know, hey, that friend grabbed that firearm. Hey, are you okay? It just gives another opportunity and could be an amazing tool in suicide prevention that gives people the opportunity to check in people when maybe they're in a moment of weakness.
Yeah, I mean, if I could interject here, I mean, that's exactly the intent, is to know if the firearm has been moved and has been transported. Uh, Again, a lot of times when something nefarious is going to happen, it's not going to happen on site where the gun is. Usually, unless it's domestic violence or something of that nature. But a lot of times that firearm is taken out of its natural environment and setting and transported somewhere else, whether that's for a robbery, a suicide, a school shooting, you name it. Um, you know, so knowing that A, it's moved, and B, where it's going, just knowing where it's going. The other thing is, which is interesting, and again, I've talked to some people, you and I, Michael, have discussed this, and we've talked with others about it. People like Waco at American Legion and Be the One. And it's just, how often is the gun moved? And what Kevin's point is right on. If grandpa's a retired veteran, and if he takes his gun out once a month to go to the range or whatever he does, but then all of a sudden there's, every day he's touching his gun, and that's new. Why? And what I've learned just in the short period of time I've been, involved in your inner circle, is that a lot of times just posing that question, hey, John Smith, Captain Smith, how you doing? What's going on? What's happening? And something like that could be enough of a pause to get them off their trajectory or whatever's going on in their mind at that split second that could ultimately end up down the wrong path. So, I look at this as a speed bump. It may not totally prevent every single car crash out there, but it's going to slow a lot. It's going to prevent a lot of them because everyone's moving a little slower, and you've got that time and space to react in the event that something is out of whack. Like, why is this gun on its way to a rally, or why is this gun on its way to a school, or why is this gun on its way to a park? Why is my grandpa going to the park with his gun?
Yeah, I think if we, as the firearms industry, start embracing this technology, and obviously, um, there's a fear, like, but we get over that and we say, like, okay, we embrace this technology and we incorporate this into our firearms ownership plan, right? Like, as a family, like, we have these discussions, like, we have this technology, we use this product, or if the time of crisis comes up, maybe this is only used during times of crisis, right? Like when somebody in the house is not doing so well, and we just add that added layer of security to our firearms ownership. I think it's brilliant. And I think this is what a lot of the outside forces that have kind of leaned towards the anti-gun side have been waiting for, like literally waiting for the firearms industry to kind of be the people that carry these messages and come forward. And I just think it's the right thing to do. I see no issue with it in terms of If you don't want to use it, don't use it. Don't buy it. If you're like that guy who's digging your heels in, as I would never do that. Okay, that's fine. But gun owners are not this monolithic thing that like one size fits all for everybody. Um, and I think what happens many times in the firearms community is the people that have the love for the Second Amendment start to think that every single gun owner is just like them. And believe it or not, there's way more that aren't like you than the echo chamber that we sit in, right? And it's important to understand that there's a lot of people. If we want this industry to thrive, we still need to sell firearms. And there's a lot of people that live with people in the house that are, scared of firearms. And this is a product that I think that you could introduce your firearms ownership to your spouse or your loved one to say, hey, look, I know you're not comfortable with this firearm in the house, but I want it for our protection. I want it to protect the community, whatever. But now we have this product to put your mind at ease on top of that, right? Like, I think it's just all comes together in this great plan. And then when we as the firearms community are running in circles now, because now we're invited to the circles that we never used to be invited to, right? We're invited to the table to talk about suicide prevention and all these things. And now if we carry this product with us and we say, like, we're pushing this out, we recommend this to firearms owners, like we're getting it out there, we're getting it out to, whatever channels, distribution. I think that's things where the people that are looking for solutions that kind of lean towards restriction are like, okay, like they're on top of it. I didn't know this type of product existed. This is really cool. We'll push it on our channels too. Right. Then it's less about the anti-gun thing, like let's
100%. And again, like I said, this was invented, created, thought about from the perspective of gun owners. Nobody that was involved in the original design and development of this product isn't super comfortable with firearms and doesn't have multiple firearms in their house. And with some scenarios, just like you described, where spouses maybe don't feel as comfortable. I've got 6 weapons in my house. My wife doesn't love the fact that we have weapons in the house, but conversely, she understands that we live in a society where thank God we've never had to use it and no one's ever broken into our house. But if that ever were to happen, at least we know we've got some protection. So, and to your point, Michael, you're right. I mean, this just adds another layer of security, another layer of peace of mind. And it's really, I mean, there's a whole other layer of complexity here because we keep looking at, the relationship between the firearm owner and the firearm. But it's, in light of what happened the other day and what happened in Michigan, 2-3 months ago, in terms of the verdict of those 2 parents that were convicted because their child went to school and and killed 3 people, and then what happened in Georgia 2 days ago. Now there's another layer of liability concern, and that really now you're looking at every single law-abiding firearm owner. Husband and wife both love guns; they're great, no pushback, no nothing. But what happens if your firearm is stolen, either by a housekeeper, by a kid who just became your kid, good kid, but became friends with a bad kid at school, tells that bad kid, hey, my dad's got a gun. The bad kid convinces your good kid to go and, just like you did, Michael, just like you and your friend did when you were little kids. You went in and you looked at his dad's gun and you pulled it out and you shot it. This is real. This really happens. And when this happened to you 30 years ago, it still happens today. I was having lunch with some police officers last week, and they told me it happens all the time. He knows his kid, and he told me, I want your technology, because he goes, when I was a kid, my dad, I went into my dad's closet, played with my dad's guns, because, man, if my dad would have gotten an alert that I'm playing with his guns, he would have come home that night and given me a whooping, and I wouldn't have touched his guns anymore. He goes, and now I know I have a 15-year-old boy, and I know my kid goes and plays with my guns. I know because the doors cracked a little open differently in the closet or whatever it is. He knows it. But he goes, I would love to be able to go to my kid with my phone and go, at 2:00 this afternoon, you touched my gun. I told you not to. Why are you doing it? So, and then the police officer even went into, and someone breaks into my house. He goes, and my gun now is on the loose. He goes, I call the station. I tell him, someone had broken into my house, and here are the coordinates of where my gun is. Go send out a squad car and go get my gun back. He's like, this is amazing. So I really think we've got to look outside the perspective, like I said, the gun owner and the gun relationship, but really what happens when the third party gets involved. And that's really where I think we can make a big impact, because that, if the laws uphold, and you saw the in Georgia, the kid's father got arrested, the next day. I mean, that was fast, and rightfully so. Whether he gets convicted or not, well, he's got to have due process, and the law's got to play out, and innocent until proven guilty. But damn, it took one day for them to arrest the father. So this is a real problem, and so every law-abiding, gun-owning parent out there should want to have something like this, so that in the event their kid takes their gun, or a burglar takes their gun, and that gun gets used nefariously, they don't end up, in jail for the rest of their life.
Yeah, I think it's important to, like, I'm a big believer in, like, I'm thinking about this with my kids. If I had this product with my kids, I would have told them, daddy has something on his firearm that if you ever touch it, I would let them know, hey,
Right.
it's going to notify me. Right. And I think that's a big deterrent. I remember when my daughter was, we had moved into a house and it had security cameras in the inside. The security cameras were inactive, but it's so funny. For a year, my daughter thought they were active.
Right.
And I never had to say anything. It's not even like I lied to her. Right. It's just like she thought, yeah. It's a deterrent.
It's a deterrent. Absolutely. All deterrents are, and we like I said, we've got to look. I'm going to say it and keep saying it over and over. It's a collective front. We're not going to tackle these big problems. These are big, massive problems. Michael and I were talking about him last night, and hopefully we'll talk about it, today, because I think it's so important in terms of, the shooting and red flag laws and all that stuff. But these are massive problems. These are societal problems that are so deep. Why do we have so many bothered people, mentally unstable people that decide to pick a poison? And there are lots of them out there, whether it's obesity, alcohol abuse, drug abuse, or just, what 13, 14-year-old kid decides that I'm going to go take my dad's gun and go kill my friends and my teachers? Or what 20-year-old kid decides I'm going to go kill a president or an ex-president of the United States? I mean, this is something that is so deeply corrosive in our society. And so, we got to get off of this. It's the firearms fault. It's not the firearms fault. No different than, it's not the refrigerator's fault if someone's obese. We don't call it refrigerator violence. So we got to, we don't call it car violence if someone gets behind the wheel and drinks to oblivion and gets in a car crash. I've never heard the term car violence. It's a DUI. It's that individual. It's that individual that poisoned themselves and then did something stupid and dangerous and caused a tragedy across the board, whether to themselves, like I said, an obese person. We don't call it pills violence if someone ODs on fentanyl. So we've got to get off of this. Politicians, we've got to change the language. We got to really go upstream and focus on the root cause of these problems. And then we've got to utilize brain trust and technology to try to put as many speed bumps and as much education and surround the path to destruction until we can figure out how to root out how to take the root cause out of why people decide to destroy themselves or others.
Yeah, I think this is I'm looking at all the different possibilities with this product, and it's like, I know there's a big push right now. I've heard about some legislation they're trying to pass that basically says people can prescribe like lock boxes for firearms, so the person who's in crisis can get something to secure their firearm at home, which I applaud that type of legislation. Like, there is some positive legislation that can come out, for guns, when it's like, if we respect people's rights. But like, that's something I could see, like, doctors or something, if they could write a prescription for the gun alert, right? For somebody who's like, hey man, like, you're going through it. We're trying this new medication at home. I need you to, really focus. I know you're probably not going to, like, give your firearm to a family member in this time, but hey, wouldn't it be cool if, like, this doctor could be like, here's a gun alert. You know what I mean? Let me show you how this technology works. Yeah,
I think you're spot on. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, I was honored to be invited to to speak at the Be the One Symposium in New Orleans at the American Legion National Convention, and it was a great honor. And we spoke about gun safety and mental health issues came up. And one of the things that came up was a lot of doctors, we overprescribe here. That's a whole separate conversation, but it's not uncommon and veterans admitted to that. It's not uncommon for them to be prescribed 6, 7, 8 different types of drugs. And okay, fine. We're trying a bunch of different things. We got, trial and error. But I agree with you. While that's happening, right, the answer shouldn't be, well, while you're taking all these different drugs, and we don't really know all the potential side effects, some of them may be, and a lot of them do say suicidal tendencies. And we've all seen those commercials. 1 out of 3 say this could cause suicidal tendencies. So you're telling me you're giving someone that has suicidal tendencies a drug that causes suicidal tendencies as a side effect. So anyway, I'm not here to challenge the medical industry, but you're right. Why not say, look, we're not going to take your gun away because you have a constitutional right and all that. But how about we put this notifying device on there, so if the gun gets moved or touched or whatever, a couple of people in your inner circle, your social worker, your caregiver, your spouse, your child, will know about it. And it's just for your safety right now while you're undergoing. I think that would be a much better delivered message than, hey, we're going to give you those drugs and take your gun away. Because I think people are going to say,
it's empowering
you, and I'm not even going to take the drugs. I'm not going to do anything. Just leave me alone. You're not taking my gun away. And so, look, I'm open to trying anything and everything. Again, my goal is, can we as a community out there get this number reduced by 10% year over year? That's the goal.
Kevin, what do we got in the chat here?
Looks like Roxy chimed in that the device, just by being attached to the gun, would be a deterrent alone. And I was wondering, Patrick, how do you address gun owners that are maybe hesitant of the cable lock type of way to attach to the firearm, but love the idea? I know at Walk the Talk, we get so many people that push back on maybe even storing in a quick access safe because they want quick access and it to be ready in a defensive situation. So how would you address maybe those concerns that love the technology, but maybe don't love the cable lock kind of similar design to attach to the firearm?
Keep it right next to the firearm. And if you keep your firearm in a gun bag or in a box or something like that, keep it right there. Even if you keep your firearm just in a holster in your nightstand, keep this device right next to it on the nightstand. Now, it's not gonna, if someone opens up the nightstand, you'll get an alert. They pick up the gun and walk out of the room. That's it. It's, there's a trade-off, obviously. But at least you'll know that someone, moved, opened your nightstand and moved the gun. But I think, if you're going to keep this in your car, and there's a lot of states that have very lenient, CCW laws. I know a lot of friends that live in Florida and Texas. They keep their guns on them, and when they go into a restaurant, they'll throw their gun in their glove box. But they also valet park their car, and they go in and have lunch or dinner for a few hours. They come out. They don't check their glove box. I know this. I've been told this. They don't check their glove box until maybe when they get home. They go out all the rest of the day. They get home, and then they go into their glove box to get their gun because they're go inside their house. And they're like, oh shit, my gun's gone. Now they got to retrace their steps back. There's so many scenarios. So not to drift, Kevin, I want to answer the question specifically. There's no way. It's either attached to the gun, and then you have the ultimate utilization of the technology, or if you don't want that because that's a trade-off for you because you want quick access to the gun, keep it in the gun bag, keep it in the gun box, keep it in the same drawer as where the gun is, and you'll get some advantages in terms of at least being notified if the gun's moved.
That would have a lot of value too. I'm thinking of people that have maybe a big safe and maybe attaching it to 5, 10 firearms in that safe might be a little out of their budget. They could put it on the door and still get an alert every time that large safe was open.
Yeah, or, your 3 best guns or most valuable guns, it's a 14-inch cable lock, so it can wrap around 4 or 5 different guns if you wanted it to. If someone were to break in and somehow grab 5 guns, they're all bolted together. And again, at least you would know that someone took the gun. And so, nothing is perfect. No solution works 100% of the time for 100% of the people. All right. We're fine. We're okay with that. not everybody loves steak. Not everybody's a vegan. I mean, the list goes on and on and on, right? I mean, sometimes you feel like a nut, sometimes you don't. So we're okay with that. Can we get this to more people than less people? And can we do more good with it than by not having this technology? And I think, that's our approach. Do we want all 403 million guns in the U.S. to have one of these? That'd be great. I wouldn't be on this podcast. I'd be on my own island somewhere. That'd be fantastic. But I'm being real. Can we get to 10% of all the guns out there? 40 million? Can we, 1%? Let's start with 1%. Can we get 4 million firearms out there where they're the most vulnerable and most susceptible to being used nefariously? So who is that? Let's start with that. Law enforcement. And I'm not picking on law enforcement. I'm just saying their guns are susceptible because they go home also. They're human beings. They're not always in a squad car. So they go home, they've got guns in their trunk or in their glove box and all that. And they travel with their guns. I mean, no cop that I know doesn't go anywhere without his gun. So they need to know where their guns are at all times also. They can't, imagine a police officer going somewhere for a deposition or just on vacation or whatever, brings a couple of guns with them and he leaves them in the hotel room. I think that police officer would want to know where that gun is at all time. He's going to carry one on him, but he may have a couple with him that he's got in the closet of the hotel room. Women are the largest new gun buyers statistically right now. More young, and especially Black and brown women. Why? Because a lot of Black and brown women live in poor neighborhoods that have higher crime. I'm not saying all Black and brown. I'm saying a lot, more than 50%. Many single women out there either have toddlers in the house or have teenagers or have, baby daddies or ex-husbands or boyfriends. So all three of those scenarios, and a lot of times it is all three. They may have a toddler, a teenager, and, not such a great boyfriend or husband or baby daddy. And all three of those are susceptible if she has a gun in her home to being used, accidentally or nefariously, right? The 5-year-old toddler doesn't know, picks up the gun, shoots a baby brother. The 15-year-old kid, again, maybe a good kid, but runs around with bad kids. And the bad kids convince him, hey, let's go take your mom's gun and bring it to school. Or the ex-boyfriend comes home and it's a domestic violence case. And so, again, you've got that silo. You've certainly got, veterans that are challenged with PTSD. Good people. They served our country honorably. That we cannot take their firearms away from them. Absolutely not, especially not them, because they gave their lives for us. I mean, we're all here doing what we're doing because veterans did what they did. So the last thing we want to do is disrespect them. But if they're not right, and hopefully it's only temporary, but they're not right in the head, we need to give them some tools so that they can't use the gun in the event that, something slips and they go into the dark side. And at least let's have their circle of friends be notified, or circle of influence be notified, so they can get to them and stop them. So there are silos of people that are more susceptible, or I would say that our technology would be much more beneficial. So, is that 5, 10, 15, 20% of the population? Hey, if we start there, like I said, 400 million guns, 10% of that's 40 million guns. Well, that could save a lot of lives.
Yeah, and I'm going to tell a little story about Bursa right now. Bursa was, when I owned Eagle Imports, Bursa was a gun manufacturer from Argentina. They're a big supporter of Walk Talk America. I recommend Bursa to anybody. Bursa makes some great guns all the way from 22s to 45s. I mean, they do AR platforms now. But the Thunder 380 was, at the time I owned Eagle, was one of the most popular 380s on the market, right? Because it was that perfect quality and price point hitting together. And it had a lot of safety features on it. It had features that a lot of like gung-ho, like gun guys wouldn't use, right? And they used to say, people would tell me like, what's this for? And I'm like, that's an integral locking system. If you ever wanted to lock your gun up. And, you get the guys who are like, oh, I'd never need that, right? Because I got to have my firearm ready at all times, which is fine. But what most people didn't realize is why I was so good at selling this gun, especially when I would attend events, was because like when a lady would walk up, right, and they were interested, a lot of times people will tell you, hey, I don't really know too much about guns, but I think I need to get one for, peace of mind or whatever be the reason. I would always point them in the direction of the Thunder 380 because it's a good starter gun for for everybody, right? Not just females, but everybody, I believe, because the 380 it's not too powerful where it's going to turn you away and you're afraid of it. You can control it. Ammo is fairly cheap. And like I said, there's a lot of safety features on this firearm, but it had a magazine disconnect. It had a decocker, and it also had the integral locking system. And I sold more guns by putting women in this scenario because I'd be like, do you have kids in the house? Yeah, I have grandkids, or yeah, I have 2 daughters, whatever, right? Like, or my neighbor's kids are over all the time. And I was like, okay, like, so if you're having a barbecue or something, you just want to, turn your gun into a paperweight, use that integral locking system and you'll have the key. And they were just like, that is really cool. Right. And it's so funny because I sold more of those firearms by the added features, the added safety features than the gung ho, like, no, my gun needs to be ready all the time. It's like, no, that's you, man. Like you're that guy, but you're not every gun owner. There are some gun owners that want that peace of mind. They want that product. And I think this product that you're pitching falls right under that category, right? Like people who are just like, I have kids in the house or I got grandkids over all the time. This just makes sense. It just makes sense. And maybe I only use it when the kids are over, right? Like maybe it's only activated when the kids are over, but like it's there, right? If you don't want to use it, don't use it. If you don't like country western music, you don't throw your radio out of the car window. You just go to another station, right? Like, and that's what I love about it. I think it's a brilliant device to have. I could see so many scenarios. I remember when I got guns stolen at SHOT Show out of my booth, right? And you're just talking about cable locking it. I would have loved to have had that. I had 2 guns stolen out of my booth at SHOT Show. I showed up to the booth one morning and I saw 2 guns off the wall and I was like, oh boy, that ain't good. And sure enough, like someone had stole guns overnight. And it would have been great to have that at a gun show, right? Because a lot of times at gun shows, when we go back to the hotel room at night, we lock the guns through cables. Like that's just how it is. So there's an application there for manufacturers. I see so many different ways we could take this technology. So, hats off to you guys for thinking about it. I have a question for you. How is this being received outside of the gun community? I know you run in a lot of technology circles.
Yeah. So great question. On surface, it's being really, really well received across the board. We have yet to really get any serious, and I underscore serious pushback. I've spoken to a lot of politicians, not to get political, but I get a little bit of pushback from some politicians, both on the right and on the left, just because they go to their natural default position. The left is, unless you're talking about taking the gun away or restricting gun ownership and all that, I don't want to hear you. And on the right, it's like, hey, leave me alone, 2A. I mean, I'm surmising it, but and obviously the politicians I've spoken to have been a lot more respectful and we've had in-depth conversations. But when someone retreats to their default position, it's hard to get through to them. But outside of that, we have been universally extremely well received and surprisingly really, really well received in your community. I mean, I've made more inroads with people like with your organization and American Legion, and we've got some calls with some large insurance companies and corporate sponsors. I've made a lot more inroads, we as a company, in terms of the product being well received in specific niche markets than I had ever expected. Again, law enforcement, super well received. We're talking to the NRA. The NRA is again, unfortunately, and I think we're going to get to them and get through to them, but they have a natural default position. They're standing strong on the 2A position, and that's okay. That's their job, and I get it. And they have to serve their membership. But I want to emphasize that we are big 2A believers and supporters, 100%. No variation on that whatsoever, or no wavering, I should say, on that whatsoever. But we also are sensible, and I see these things just as an observer. I hear these stories, whether it's your story. I heard another story recently about a young man, and he and his friend walked into their house, and their 5-year-old kid had his brains were splattered all over the living room floor. And the father, within a year, ended up taking his own life. And now his friend has come to us and said, I want to be part of your organization. I want to help get the word out, because I was there with my friend when his 5-year-old's brains were splattered all over. And a year later, he just couldn't take the guilt that he hadn't properly secured his firearm, and he took his own life. I mean, these things happen. I've been with police officers where they say, someone broke. We went into Denny's and had lunch, and we come out of the parking lot and our trunk's been jimmied and our long guns have been taken. So, I mean, these things happen. The school shooting in Georgia, the attempted assassination on Trump. These things happen. So we can't hide our head in the sand and say, 2A, leave me alone. We can't. I won't. And I know some people want to. I won't. And I know you won't either, Michael. And again, that's why I think this is so great, because we got to get that message across. And would I love every gun to have our device? Sure. Again, I'm realistic. Give me 1 or 2%, and then 3 or 4%, and let's dent the number of deaths and tragedies year over year, and let's approach this sensibly, common sense, step by step. Not these radical laws that generally are created in a vacuum by people that have no understanding of what their consequences are going to be. When politicians create laws and they don't really see them all the way through, all they do is ultimately create more problems.
Yeah, feel-good legislation never works. I want to talk about Atlanta right now, or the tragedy in Georgia, because this morning I was, as the information is coming in, and obviously the father was arrested, but I heard an interesting clip of the father talking to the police about a year ago or something like that. I guess the police have been notified by the FBI that the kid was saying some stuff. And it was crazy, because what the dad was saying to the cops was everything that we wanted to hear as a responsible gun owner, right? He was talking about how in that household, they take guns very serious. They take safety very serious. So something happened. Something happened where either he got lazy or he was lying to the cops when he said that. I don't know. I wasn't there, so I'm not going to speak on it. But I think of this scenario of, I want to believe that nobody wants this tragedy to happen, and nobody thinks their kid is necessarily going to shoot up a school, even if he threatens it. But these things do happen. But if he would have had a gun alert on that AR, you can't argue that something, the universe could have been altered.
No, you're absolutely right. You can't. I use the Trump assassination analogy all the time. I can't prove that there would have been a different outcome, but you can't deny that there could have been a different outcome. And I think, if I had to give it odds, I'd say it's 65-35, 65 that there would have been a better positive outcome. And maybe, it could be 99-1. It's certainly not the other way. I mean, no, information is powerful. Information, we live off of data. So being notified that a weapon is on its way to a rally where the president is going to be speaking, even if the kid had no ill intention, just knowing that that's happening, creates an alert situation, an awareness situation. Not a bad thing. I'm not saying they should have arrested the kid right on the spot just because he had a rifle on him, but certainly knowing that there's a rifle on its way there to that rally could have not hurt. And most likely it could have benefited. Same thing in Georgia. You say, it's interesting. You say, no parent wants this. I would say most likely most 99.9% of most parents don't. But we can't deny there's evil out there in the world. And we can't deny that there's stupidity out there in the world and ignorance out there in the world. And so this may have, unfortunately, and again, let's let the investigation play out, innocent until proven guilty, and all that. You're told that your 13-year-old kid's doing this, and you somehow don't take every single possible measure to secure those firearms. Shame on you, Dad. I mean, that's not right. And shame on our politicians that are coming out and saying, he should have confiscated the gun a year ago. No, there's no laws that would have enabled any law enforcement agency to confiscate those guns. Freedom of speech, First Amendment, Second Amendment, freedom to bear arms, the right to bear arms. So you couldn't have done anything. So the police officer that did investigate this, it's not on them. Politicians are saying we should ban all ARs. No, that's not the answer. Um, it's no different than drinking and driving. You don't ban alcohol because unfortunately someone does something stupid. You just have to reinforce the common sense approach and make sure that most people, most law-abiding, conscientious, morally sound people know not to do these things or know not to let their kids do these things. Unfortunately, things slip through the cracks. We're a free country, and there's a trade-off for being free. These things happen, and my condolences are out there to the families that suffered on 2 days ago and have suffered historically from these horrible tragedies. It's terrible, but you can't. Confiscating 403 million guns is not the answer, or preventing future gun sales is not the answer. We have to create more awareness. We have to, through PSAs. How about PSAs? How about politicians saying, everybody that owns a gun going forward is going to have to take a course. You drive a boat, you drive a car, you drive a plane, you fly a plane, just about anything you do, a tractor, a motorcycle, you got to go take a license every year, every 2 years, every 4 years. Why don't we do that for guns? I don't want new laws or anything, but why don't we start thinking more creatively and out of the box? Like let me ask you from the gun community, would gun owners object to taking a course just like you do with a driver's license? Every 4 years, you got to take a written test, and every 6 years, you got to take a driving test. Is that totally outrageous and unreasonable?
So here's the thing. Our stance at WTTA is we don't like anything that's mandatory, right?
Okay.
But we love the idea of encouraging firearms owners to want more knowledge, to want to take their CCW course. And you're starting to see some of these mandatory things happen. That's one of the reasons why WTTA is here. Is like what we want to do is when we try to stay ahead of things. So like, for example, when the state of Maryland and New York and California started to make mandatory 1 hour suicide prevention and mental health part of the curriculum for CCW firearms instructors. They went to the instructors and said, we need you to do this now. And, we're putting this in the law. The instructors turned around and they said, well, we're not, what are we supposed to do? Like, tell us what you want. And they were like, well, we don't know. We just want you to do this. Right. Well, WTTA was there to basically say, okay, they want an hour. Let's give them an hour, and let's give them a fantastic hour. Let's give them an hour full of information. Let's get these firearms owners to think about, things that they had never thought about before. And what we found is a lot of the instructors that use this video aren't even in states that are compelled to do it. Right. The instructors heard about this and said, this is awesome. I just want to incorporate it. Right. So we believe that the change can come within. When I look at the mandatory.
Hold on. You just said something that I got my light bulb went off. How about, utilizing technology? What if every gun box or every ammunition box had a QR code on there that took you to a 20-minute, 10-minute, whatever instructional, safety video?
I'm all for it.
Think about that. Like easy, everyone has a cell phone, everyone has a smartphone. So you go in, you buy ammo, you buy a gun, whatever it is. Again, not mandatory, by choice. You see this QR code and it just says, 10-minute, video created by people like you, right? Law enforcement, experts, not pushing any kind of agenda. I bet you 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10 are going to click on that QR code and watch that video.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Look. I'm all for it. And if everyone wants to jump in and start, WTTA is ready to help to make sure that QR code's available. No, but so here's the thing.
Let's work on that together. We're going to be working with American Rounds.
Right.
It's a whole different conversation. If we have time, I know we're running late on time, but we're going to be working with them, and I know you're going to be working with them as well, handing out kits. They're going to be featuring you on, featuring an infomercial, for lack of a better definition, about WTTA. There are a lot of things that and again, that's technology. They're utilizing technology, right? American Rounds is a technology distribution company. We're a gun safety technology company. There's a lot of ways we can do this without, I'll backtrack on what I said earlier. I agree with you. We shouldn't mandate these things, but we can make them more readily available.
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
That's where I wanted to go. Kevin, what are your thoughts?
Patrick, what I've heard too is the quality of training or requirements would be a fear for gun owners. If it was mandated, some people would point to maybe some medicinal marijuana where doctors maybe get paid and they just sign it, but they're not actually going through the proper kind of things. And the worry of if it was mandated training, there would be a lot out there that might just be, hey, check my box for me. I don't want to have to do this 6 hours of training. And it would actually result in worse quality of training and people getting that education instead of better.
I think that's a great, again, look, the three of us, we brainstormed, and then within 2 minutes, we punched a hole through something, and I'll back off. And I agree. Let's not make it mandatory, because Kevin, what you said, you're right. You make it mandatory, people are going to figure out a way to cheat the system and all that. But let's make it more accessible. Let's make accessing that information about gun safety more accessible. As a matter of fact, I'm going to do that. Michael, we're going to work on putting together a little instructional video, and we're going to have a QR code on all of our boxes that go out, because there's no reason. No, I should do what your slogan. I should walk the talk. So.
No, I love it. And the other thing I want to talk about I know we're up against it. I'm not. I can stay here and talk to you all day. I'm trying to be cognizant of your time, but when it comes to these mandatory things, it's like also who's going to pay for that, right? And this is going back to what I would love to see, what I would consider more positive legislation, right? Like programs where people, because when you go buy a gun, you're looking at a minimum $300, most likely, right? Like that's
And
right. So now then you got ammo, you got a holster, right? You got security device, like whatever locking.
A gun alert. Let's not forget
a gun alert. You got to get a gun alert, right? No, but so like this adds up. This is not, I mean, people need to understand, they make it like, oh, you can just go easily buy a gun. It's like, no, that's not true. And also you have to save for this, right? And who does that affect? It affects the underprivileged, underserved communities, right? To me, when I look at the single mother from Compton, right? Like, she has every right to have access to all the safety things and all the stuff that comes with firearms ownership and the Second Amendment. She's going to get punished. Where's she going to skip? She's going to skip on training, right? Those are the places you're going to like, I can't afford this. Like, I need to buy the
gun and the ammo. The gun and the ammo are first, maybe then the holster and the bag. But yeah, you're right. The gun alert and the training courses are last on the list.
Yeah, they're good, and this is what I'd like to see.
They should be side by side. I think that's the point we're making. They should be side by side without mandating it. But we got to come up and figure out as collectively as a whole, society as a whole has to collectively figure out. They got to be side by side. When you go buy a car, you've got to plan that you've got to have enough money to put gas in the car and pay for car insurance, right? It's got to be side by side. Nobody buys a car and then goes, gas? Insurance? I don't have any more money. Right? And so we got to do the same thing. Gun, ammo, bag, gun alert, security, safety course. It's got to be all inclusive.
Yeah, I just would like to see, if the government is so concerned with saving lives and getting education out there when it comes to firearms, like take some of the money that you put in some of these other goofy programs or send to other countries and start putting it into making things available for people that would utilize it if they wanted it. You know what I mean? To me, you should be able to get it. What are your thoughts, Kevin, on funding these type of things?
It just reminded me of our survey last fall. We got 361 respondents. We wish we got a little bit more reach for stronger results, but we asked, would you support legislation that offered rebates for purchasing a safe or storage device? And only, 73% said no, but where the split was funding of how it would be funded. So only, 4% said yes, taxpayer funded. 28% said privately funded, and then 40% said yes, regardless of the funding. And we asked the same question about pays for firearm education and training, and that one was only 14% said no, and then 50% said yes, regardless. And then let's see, 22% said yes privately, and then 13 said taxpayer. So it seems like there's a lot of good ideas that the sticking point is how it's funded, and maybe just trying one, even if people are like, oh, we don't like that it's government funded, we want nothing to do with it. Same with a lot of topics we've already said. Okay, then don't get it and do the government if you don't want it, but it might give the access to people that couldn't otherwise afford it.
Well, let me address something you said. That's great data points, by the way. But our device is not out of line with all the other things, that all the other accoutrements. All right. So our device retail is $149. So that's, in today's world, what, 5 boxes of ammunition? That's maybe one, nice gun case, or two, a holster and a gun case. I mean, it's not like, you're buying a $10 gun and $2 bullets in a 50-cent case, and then you got to go spend $150 on a safety device, right? I mean, this is like LoJack and back in the day. If anybody's old enough to remember LoJack, you bought a $40,000 car and you bought a $695 tracking device for the car, right? You didn't buy a $40,000 car and a $90,000 tracking device. That would have never flown, right? So this is the same thing. You're buying I'm going to say it's a $500 on average for an entry level gun. I mean, all my friends, they spend thousands on their guns. I'm sure yours do too. But even your number of 300, Michael, 300 for a gun, a couple $100 for ammo, 100 to $150 for a bag and a holster and a case and all that. Another $150 for the gun alert and a $99 training course. You're under $1,000. I mean, it's not unreasonable. If you're going to go do this and, go scuba diving, go take up any hobby, go take up surfing, there isn't a skiing, there isn't a hobby out there that's not going to cost you $1,000 day one. None, zero.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I just, like I said, it's going back to the mandate thing. I think there's got to be ways. What do you got? Race cars there?
No, it's our trash service. Let me see if I can mute you for a second.
No, it's all good. But going back to what we're saying, it's just like, I would love a world where if someone wanted this device, they could potentially get help or a rebate, something to encourage them, because I feel like with gun ownership, safety sometimes gets thrown to the side when you add up the end of the bill. And the Second Amendment is for everyone. It's not just for rich people. I think it's even more important for people that live in areas where the cops don't show up, or there is a fear of the cops, where you are your own first responder. And to me, like I said, I think of, I grew up with a single mother. She worked her ass off. We couldn't afford a lot of things growing up. If my mom would have been into firearms at the time, I would have liked her to be able to feel the most secure with that firearm in the household. I wouldn't want her to skip. I would want her to be able to get that gun alert. And if we're going to talk about government mandating stuff and funding, okay, let's get them to start funding stuff that would encourage people and reward them. I have a pool in the backyard of my house, right? I'm very fortunate. I get a tax break, or, an insurance break if I have a fence around it. Like, the insurance gives me a break for a fence. Should also
they're not
get
giving you a break for a fence. They're giving you a break for being safety minded.
Correct. Right. Good point. We should have that for firearms too. Yeah. Right. We should for responsible gun owners that come forward that say, I want to carry this message and I want to be able to secure my firearm, and I do not want it stolen from my house or my car, so I'm going to get a gun alert. And they should be rewarded for that in some way. It should be encouraged, right? The shops that carry this stuff, I think we got to start thinking of creative ways to inspire people to get involved in the message and in the products and get behind the products. Yeah. I think they get cut.
Yeah, it seems like what Patrick said earlier of making it priority 1 or 1A and 1B of getting the firearm and the ammunition, but also a way to securely store it and that. But also what came to my mind is, Patrick, and those kind of demographics you ran through of maybe the biggest impact we could make with kind of reducing negative outcomes from firearms would be a financial barrier to where if you helped remove that financial barrier, you'd be able to maybe make a bigger impact by kind of combating it on both sides.
Well, we have a lot of. You're absolutely right, and we're working with legislators to get that message across and ultimately get that passed into law. But you're absolutely right. We have a ton of programs in this country for means qualified people. From SNAP to food stamp. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Medicaid. I mean, we have hundreds of billions of dollars are dedicated to help and assist people that are means qualified, right? That live below the poverty line or at the poverty line or all that. Statistics show that, again, young women that live in underserved communities are the largest percentage of new gun owners in this country right now. Right now. I mean, that statistic may change in 5 years, but right now we're living in dangerous times. And so, yeah, that woman may have 2 jobs. Again, she may be, she's definitely the one that's going to scrape and scrounge and save to buy the gun and maybe 1 box of ammo. Everything else is it's just not going to go. It's not going to fly. And so we got to get her that help. She or he that help. It's not just women. I mean, there's young men also. I have a cousin. He's just turned 40. Never owned a gun. Never thought about owning a gun. He decided, 6 months ago, I don't like the crime. And we live in Los Angeles, and crime rate's gone up. And he lives in a nice house up in the hills, and break-ins are very common now. And he went out and bought himself a Glock. This is happening. These are real stories. And so he doesn't need assistance. He's financially very well off. But there are a lot of people that have the same mindset, but they do need that financial assistance. Our government needs to really rethink how they, quote unquote, help people. We waste billions on stupid things that don't do anything. Our state's, the worst. We spent $24 billion in California to address the homeless problem. And we have more homeless people now than when we started spending the money 5 years ago. So $24 billion was eviscerated. 1% of that money could have purchased a gun alert for every new gun owner in this country that makes less than 50, in this state that makes less than 50 grand. 1% of that money.
Yeah.
And that would have definitely helped save lives. So, we've got to keep pushing. We just got to keep pushing. And I think we've got to get through. We got to start by changing the narrative. That guns don't kill people. It's, people that kill people with a gun, but people can kill people with anything, right? We don't ban knives. We don't ban machetes. We don't ban chopsticks. And if I want to kill somebody, I could poke them in the neck with a chopstick. Well, that's it. We're going to every Chinese restaurant and round up chopsticks. I mean, where does this insanity? We got to really deal with it. I mean, I know it's funny, right? We're all laughing, but how many politicians do we want to name? We're not going to, because we don't want to shame any of them. But I can think of 4 in the last 48 hours that have come out and said, stupid things like, let's ban all ARs. Let's do a mandatory buyback, right, of all these horrible assault rifles, right? There's no such thing it's not an assault rifle. I mean, we know that, our president, said, let's ban all high capacity magazines. Okay, why? 20 bullets are going to kill somebody, but 5 aren't. So, right. I mean, it's like,
where's
these
the
things are just
threshold
nonsensical. Yeah, they just don't make sense.
I tell people all the time when they ask me about ARs and if banning ARs would help. And I say, if I told you that banning red sports cars will stop drunk driving, are you in? And they're like, no, that's ridiculous. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, more red Ferraris and red Porsches have flown off a cliff in the California coastline than any other car. I mean, we can start from James Dean and work our way up since the 50s. So, yeah, I agree with you. Let's ban all red Ferraris and Porsches.
So what's the rollout plan for Gun Alert? What's the strategy? Just so the listeners who hears this understand where you're going with it.
Yeah, so we have a very defined strategy. Over the next 6 months, it's creating awareness, doing what we're doing with you today, and what I did 2 weeks ago in New Orleans, and what I'm going to continue on doing, and forming alliances and partnerships, and really creating some very high level awareness in all corners. So whether it's through lobbyists in DC, whether it's through nonprofits like yours or the American Legion, whether it's through working with American Rounds. I'm going to go to Utah next week, and we're going to work with a filmmaker and do some shorts for a movie that's coming out on suicide prevention. I'm going this weekend to meet with some people in the music industry, in the rapping, in the rap industry, in the hip hop community, I should say, rap industry. Oh my God, I'm old. In the hip hop community.
You're aging yourself. I love it.
In the hip hop community, and we're going to try to get that message out to the Black and Brown community utilizing music. So we're big believers in utilizing the arts, the nonprofits, even government agencies. If we can manage messaging. But right now, the next 3-4, till the end of the year, it's just really creating all that awareness, working with partners and nonprofits and corporate sponsors to get the product out where it's going to be the most effective. And then in 2025, we're going to start rolling out a direct to consumer. I mean, you can go right now as a consumer, you can go buy our product online at mygunalert.com. Very easy. Like I said, $149, Amazon and all that. But that's not our focus right now. I mean, if we sell 20 of these a day for the next year, it's not going to make a real dent. We want responsible gun owners out there to join our team. But I really want to go to the areas where it's going to have the most impact. I mean, for me, it's school shootings, suicide prevention, law enforcement, first responders, underserved, underprivileged people that are buying a gun for the first time because they live in a community where the police doesn't get there as quickly, or there's just too much crime. And those are the areas where we're going to be able to make a real impact. I mean, I told you, I'm in the business of saving lives. Yes, we're a for-profit company, but we're for-profit with purpose, right? And that's really important to us. So, I want to roll out product through alliances and partnerships, both private and public and government sector, and get the product in the hands of as many people where it's going to really put a big impact. And then we'll ultimately become a retail play, and hopefully we'll be on every gun store shelf, and every gun manufacturer will hopefully recommend us at some point, and we'll just be, you buy the gun, you buy the ammo, you buy the case, the holster, you buy the gun alert. That's our goal, is to just be one of those accoutrements. It's the ketchup with the French fries, it's the ice and the Coca-Cola. I mean, it's the peanut butter and the jelly. I mean, we got to get it to that. Right now, Gun Alert is just new to a lot of people. It's maybe a little intimidating, and it's like, hey, I've talked to hardcore gun owners that have 20, 30 guns. Like, nah, this isn't for me. Okay, that's okay. I don't need to convince you. But that new gun owner, my cousin, that disenfranchised woman that lives in the hood, that's my customer. Veterans that may be suffering from PTSD, that's my customer. And I don't want them to have to come up with the money. I'd like the private sector and the government to help, at least help sponsor. They deserve it. I mean, we're giving these people food stamps, or we're giving these veterans, we're giving them medical assistance. This is just it's a very, very inexpensive piece in terms of what we're giving them already. We really want to try to help save their lives. Let's give them, it's like giving, half of a life jacket. Well, if you go overboard, you need the whole life jacket. Half of it's not going to do you any good.
Yeah, I think you're going to be surprised. I think there's a whole new wave of gun owners coming up. There's I was talking with Chris Toomer from Ross Martin. He owns Ross Martin Firearms. A fairly young guy who owns a gun company that's up and coming, and there's this whole new attitude that's coming forward about responsible gun ownership and being in tune with your mental health. And we're just seeing it. It's a cultural shift. When I started this in 2018, I mean, there were so many people that looked at me sideways, and it was like, nobody cares, or, there was this fear. And now you're just getting like firearms instructors and gun shops. They're all like pitching in to do whatever they can to spread these messages. So I think, the new breed, the new gun owners that are coming up, especially with the way that we're approaching children these days. I know Walk Talk America has a giant push with like programs like Kids to Kings. And I think about like Derek from Kids Safe and all the great work he does with these kids. when you take these kids young and you start implementing like, hey, be in tune with your mental health as you learn gun ownership and you learn how to use this thing, this tool, that's when we can take the parents and let them know about these great products that are out there that complement the whole gun ownership experience, right? And so the kid only knows this coming up. Like he only knows that, the best way to keep your gun is with a gun alert. But the parents now know it. And then it's a whole new generation. It's not like the old days.
You're spot on. I want to, unfortunately, I do have to roll and get going, but this has been great. I'd love to be invited another time and continue. But I want to close with what you just said. When I was growing up, we went to parties, we drank, did whatever, and we drove home that night. And unfortunately, I did have friends in high school and college that lost their lives because they drank or did whatever, too much and got in a car accident. This generation, young kids now, they don't even think about it. They're like, oh no, we're going to Uber, right? So it took a generation, but kids now, a lot of kids now are not as smart as I think when my generation was growing up, but in certain ways, they're way smarter. Like first we didn't have Uber, right? But again, technology, it's the same thing. When I went to a party when I was 18 years old, I drank a couple of beers and I drove home. I was stupid. I shouldn't have, right? But I didn't have the mental awareness or the technological capabilities to call an Uber. There's no smartphones. There was no Uber. But now there is. And no kid even thinks about driving to a party. None. Adults don't even think. I have friends of mine that I live in the Hollywood Hills and I have friends that live at the beach. We'll have a dinner party. They'll Uber to my house. We like to drink wine at my house and have a good time. And I'm like, you Ubered? And these are guys that have Ferraris and, Mercedes Benzes and Porsches in their cars, in their garages. They Uber to my house. It's like, so it took 20 years, but so you're spot on. I mean, I think you're right. We've got to, that's what I'm saying. Our go-to-market strategy is we got to get the awareness. We got to start getting it from all angles to create that awareness so that this becomes party, drinking, Uber. Right?
Right.
Gun, ammo, holster, gun alert, training course.
Gun alert. Yeah.
Right. I mean, we got, and it's not there yet. I mean, like I feel like we're in gun safety where my generation was. We're going to parties and having martinis, or beers or whatever, and then driving home. We were dumb, and there was a lot of DUIs back then. Johnny Carson, 4 or 5 DUI. I mean, there isn't an actor, and I live in Los Angeles, in Hollywood. So there isn't an actor that, I should say there isn't, but, so many of them, got DUIs. I mean, it was a thing back in the 70s and 80s. You went to parties, you got messed up, and you drove home. And some didn't make it, and a lot of them got arrested. That doesn't happen anymore. It just doesn't. So we got to do the same thing with seatbelts, right? When I first started driving, you didn't put a seatbelt on. Nobody even thinks of going into a car without putting on a seatbelt. You feel awkward, right? If you don't. I mean, and what did it take? It took a mandate for the government stepped in, told car manufacturers, that they have to put the beeping light, on the dashboard. It says put your seatbelt on. I don't even know anybody that waits for the beeping, for the buzzing light. You put your seatbelt on before you even start your engine. That was not the case when I was growing up. So it's going to take, right. I hope it doesn't take an entire generation. I hope we make gun alert, gun safety, training, like I said, part of all the legs of that stool of purchasing a firearm. I'm hoping we can get this done in the next 5 years. There's no reason, it took a long time for the seatbelt, for the DUIs, all that, for, drinking and driving to not be cool and all that, because we didn't have the technological advancements that we do now. We have the ability now. Right. The idea of creating a video and a QR code and all that 20 years ago was not possible. It is possible today. So I think we can get there. And my goal is to get there in the next 5 years. And once we do that, we're going to see a lot of lives saved.
Okay. Well, I know we're up against it. I got one last question for you. This is what we ask all of our guests. How do you tend to your mental health?
Wow. I was not expecting that. Doing things like what we're doing right now. I try to talk to a lot of people. I try to not live. I live my life in as much harmony as I can. Meaning, I exercise every day. I spend a lot of time nurturing my relationships with friends and family. My wife and our best friends. I try to travel, so see the world as much as possible and get exposed to different cultures. I'm also just like to be, I love to engage in stimulating conversation. So I get to learn other people's perspectives. And that helps me, and I'm passionate about what I do. I mean, I love doing what I do, and I know I have purpose in life. I wake up every morning and I know I'm not just providing an income for my family, but I'm also saving some lives, or work developing technology that can help save lives. So that gives me a lot of solace, and that doesn't mean I don't have my demons. We all do. Um, we all have baggage. The question is, do you want it to be Toomey or Samsonite? And I want mine to be, the high end baggage that I can keep contained as much as possible. And just trying to the first and foremost really is trying to be present and be aware that shit happens, and just try to absorb it, and let it go. Just talk to people. Like I said, doing stuff like this, all of our conversations are therapeutic because I learn, and that learning experience gets me to, I learned something watching one of your podcasts with Chris.
Tato. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, he said something that was just unbelievably resonating to me when he mentioned that, 18 years old, you enlist to go into the service, you're given a weapon. The government tells you this is your best friend. This is the tool that's going to save your life. By the way, we want you to go overseas and kill a lot of people with this tool. Then you come home and then you don't feel good in the head. And the government says, I'm going to take your best friend away from you. That story just so resonated in terms of, because I didn't understand. I didn't serve. My father did, but I didn't. So it was hard for me to understand, this mental illness issue. And I got that. Like when he said that story and I watched your podcast, I was like, yeah, I could see when you take someone's best friend away from them, that could be really painful. So just learning and being exposed to, people that give me knowledge. And that's how I try my best to stay sane.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I value our friendship. Thank you for coming on. I look forward to really doing some amazing things with you in the future. And you've already hit the ground running. And so, kudos to you and the way you're approaching this whole thing. And I think you're going to be a welcome addition to the firearms community. So I look forward to kind of seeing this grow. What's the best way for people to check you out? Check out the product, check out the company.
Company metalert.com, all one word, metalert.com. The product Gun Alert, all one word, gunalert.com. I'm on LinkedIn. We're on all the social media sites. We're a small publicly traded company, trade on with the OTC. Our ticker symbol is MLRT. So we're very visible out there. So yeah, I welcome anybody to, and anybody wants to communicate, directly with me through you. If they want to send you, emails, you can pass those on to me. Happy to answer it. And again, this was a great honor, and I'm truly grateful that you invited me and gave me all this time. Appreciate it a lot.
Okay. Well, I want to thank all the sponsors for making this show possible. We want to thank the listeners for tuning in. We really appreciate your support. Make sure you share this message. Make sure you get the word out there. If you love Walk Talk America, the first rule of Walk Talk America, don't stop talking about Walk Talk America. Talk about it to everybody. Talk about Gun Alert. Go check them out. And until next time, folks, we all wish you better mental health, and, see you soon.